Hello, everybody. How you doing today? This is Saucony Prince of SauconyPrince.com, where we make motivation personal by introducing you to yourself. And I want to welcome you to another episode of the H.E.A.L podcast. H.E.A.L is an acronym for Help, Elevate, and Learn, and it's based on my latest book with the same title. The subtitle is It's a Guide to Healing Your Inner Child. I'm so excited because this book actually recently just got an award at the International Impact Award Show, and I am so excited because it lets me know that my book and the work that we're doing is making an impact. But listen, I want to make sure that we thank our sponsor, none other than BetterHelp. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/SauconyPrinceHeal. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who's had years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer, via a phone call, a video chat, or messaging. However you feel most comfortable, it is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/SauconyPrinceHeal or choose Saucony Prince Heal during your sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. And again, we want to thank BetterHelp for being a sponsor of this amazing episode. And I cannot tell you how excited I am for our guest today. I'm going to bring up on the screen, but it's none other than my good friend, SouLah, the legend. Hey, SouLah, you there?
Chicone, how are you?
I am fine, and you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you.
Good. Tell the people about who you are and why they should listen to you.
Wow, that's you just starting off like that?
Yes.
Nobody should listen to me. There's no reason.
Come on. You have a ton of information that I know is going to help us all get to a better place and a better space in life.
Well, I don't know about people should listen to me, but I love listening to myself. So my name is actually Lanine Hanaya, but I go by SouLah the Legend. I'm a creative influencer and entertainer. I'm also the founder of a nonprofit called Don't Miss Out, which is dedicated to trauma recovery, suicide prevention, and teachings on emotional health. And how I got into that was just having a background of mental health struggles, bipolar disorder, complex CPSD, and a long bout with suicidal depression, multiple failed suicide attempts. Thankfully, they failed. Right, like I didn't need to say that. Right, that was unnecessary. Obviously, they failed, but or I wouldn't be here. Right, and also having to help my son get through that. I've had to help my children through depression, but I have a son who also attempted suicide, and I wrote a book about that called Help, My Child Doesn't Want to Live, How to Reach a Depressed Suicidal Teen. And so, these are things that I'm very passionate about. I've been a speaker since I was 11 years old. I know I don't look like it, but I'll be 50 in a couple of months. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Hey, we're not there yet, but I'll take it. I'll take it for 49.
Okay.
But yeah, I've been a speaker since I was 11, a writer since I was 6. And I'm just very, very passionate about pouring into people. I love to pour into people. So if you should listen to me, you should listen to me because I help you feel good.
Okay. Well, we'll take that. We will definitely take that. So let's see how good you help us feel as we go through these questions here.
Okay.
Because I have 7 questions that I normally ask all of my guests, and believe it or not, there's just a myriad of different answers, but I want to get your take and your experience because I know somebody is going to be able to resonate with you, what it is you have to say. So the first question is, in your professional or personal opinion, how important is inner child healing?
I would say that's an interesting question to ask me at this stage and phase of my life. Mm-hmm. There was, as a matter of fact, let me show you my little baby here. This was actually my inner child healing doll.
Okay. Cabbage Patch doll. I'm with you.
Cabbage Patch doll. When I was doing something, I did 365 days of video reels, which I called my Healing Out Loud journey. And during my Healing Out Loud journey, I was really focused on inner child healing because I was going through trauma recovery therapy,
Mhm.
like specific trauma focused therapy. And they
Right.
talked a lot about the inner child. And one day I was in the Goodwill store looking for something, and I saw this doll. She was naked. She had markers scribbled all over her back and face, and there wasn't even a price on it. It just like an abandoned throwaway piece of child. And for some reason, that really resonated with me because I always wanted a Cabbage Patch doll when I was a little girl, and we couldn't afford Cabbage Patch dolls because they were like $200-300 back
Yes,
then.
yes, they
That's
were.
expensive for a doll today. So imagine back in the 80s, like how crazy expensive that was for a doll. So anyway, though, when I saw the doll there, something about that just spoke to me so loud. Is just seeing her lying there naked and scribbled on and kind of thrown away and not wanted. I felt like it really spoke to how I saw myself
Mm.
as a child. And so I took it to the register and I was like, hey, this was just laying up there. Can I buy it? And they sold me the doll for $1.99.
Wow.
Right. So like something that costs hundreds of dollars, which in today's economy was is probably worth 1,000, maybe $1,500, by comparison, now costing $1.99 in a Goodwill store, felt so much like how I saw myself as a child growing up. And so I feel like healing the inner child has a lot to do with correcting the damaged self image that
Hmm.
we had back then. And for some months, I don't remember really how long, but for some months, I used to sleep with this doll. I would travel with her. It was my emotional support doll. I would get
Okay.
on planes with her. And every time I started to feel a sense of unworthiness, I knew
Hmm.
that was coming from some place in my childhood. And so I would just hug her and I say, it's okay, little Lenine, you are loved, you are worthy,
Hmm.
you are valuable, you are redeemed. And I would just use the doll as a focus on
Right.
speaking to that part of myself that
Right.
didn't get enough of that growing up. And this is to say nothing of my mom. She's wonderful. And the adults that I had in my life, they gave all that they had to give. They weren't
Right.
perfect, but I know they gave everything. But some holes were left, some voids were left. And so I began to speak to that part of myself using this doll as a focal point. You are loved. I'm here. I'm going to protect you. I'm not going to let anybody hurt you. Your ideas are good. I want you to tell me all of your ideas. Let's have fun. Let's play. And that was it really did a lot for me. And so I think being at this point where I've experienced so much of what we might refer to as healing, I probably would call it something different at this stage of my life, but I'm going to use that word because it is a good word. Having experienced so much healing, that was definitely a part of it, fixing that broken self image that was projected onto me as a child.
Okay. Okay. Well, listen, I applaud the fact that you went through that process because there are so many people that have yet to actually do that. And I really started on this path of talking about inner child healing from an event I did several years ago at a Focus Women's Conference here in Mobile. I was asked to speak,
Mm,
and I spoke to several women, probably about 100 women in a room, and I spoke for an hour. And my subject was wearing the right mindset. And
mm,
at the end of that presentation, I gave probably about a 2 minute exercise where I had them to first of all secure their belongings because let's say, look, everybody ain't saved. Get your purse and your phone. But then
right.
I had them to close their eyes and put their hand over their heart, and I had them to talk to the little girl that was in them.
Mm,
I
mm,
had them to actually tell that little girl how proud of them she was. She was
mm.
proud of the woman that she became, but I wanted them to thank that little girl for the strength she had to endure
Yes.
whatever she went through for them to be there.
Yes.
And at the end of that presentation, I can't tell you how many women came up to me of different ages, different stages, different races, ethnicities, came up to me and thanked me. And a lot of them had tears in their eyes, but they
Yeah.
thanked me for that because they had forgot about the fact that they still are carrying around inside of them that little child.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what really started me on this path and on this journey to actually talking
Mm.
about. Because again, there are a lot of adults that are dealing with current day behavior that was seeded in their childhood, and they don't draw the connection. And so, like I've oftentimes said, this podcast is meant to not end the conversation, but I want to start the conversation surrounding inner child wounds, inner child trauma, but more importantly, inner child healing. So I do applaud you for doing that work because that puts you in a better place and a better space when it comes to you living today.
Yeah.
So my
Thank you.
second question is, in your professional opinion, when should someone start inner child work?
I believe that when you are aware that you're you are repeating cycles. So
Right,
childhood trauma leads to repeated cycles that produce results that you don't want. So
right,
if you're having repeated cycles of unwanted results, that almost always ties back to some type of childhood trauma. And as soon as you're aware of that, like literally just recognizing the pattern has to be enough. Even if you've never been diagnosed with anything, even if you're not aware, like I remember, and this is something really poignant that I hope people can take something away from this. I was not aware of the childhood trauma that happened to me because it happened before I was able to form a memory of it.
mm-hmm,
My cells knew that it happened because trauma gets stored in cellular memory. It's a
right,
vibration. But I had no conscious awareness of the sexual trauma that began when I was only 2 years old. But I
mm-hmm,
recognized patterns
right,
because I was a counselor, a ministerial counselor, and because I was a healer. I saw people coming to me that were consciously aware of those childhood traumas and they had certain behavior patterns. And I said, hey, I have those same patterns.
wow,
And so, you sometimes may not even remember. And this happened to me when I was 2. That's why I didn't remember it. That doesn't even matter. Sometimes it can happen when you're 15, when you're 10, when you're
right,
20. The brain has a way of blocking out painful memories. So
exactly,
you cannot have a conscious memory of something that happened when you were old enough to remember it. You need to look out for patterns because patterns of unwanted results, repeated patterns of unwanted results, is an indication that is a symptom of trauma. And it doesn't even have to be childhood trauma, it usually stems from childhood. But any type of unresolved trauma is going to create those patterns. So
okay,
that's when the work needs to begin. So if you're aware of the trauma, great, then it goes without saying, do the work. But if you're unaware of a pattern and you don't even know the trauma that's connected to it, start the
mm-hmm,
work.
yeah, definitely, definitely. So now this brings us to our next question, which a lot of people they take a deep breath on this one, and that
Okay.
is, how does trauma show up in life and relationships?
So I think I kind of answer both of those questions at the same time because it's those repeated patterns. It's
Right,
those
right,
cycles that you can't seem to break, those intrusive thoughts, depression that you can't seem to shake,
mm-hmm,
patterns of what feels like failure,
okay,
self-sabotage. So since I
yeah,
already said patterns, I will specify some of those patterns, right?
okay,
Toxic relationships
mm-hmm,
is a huge trauma pattern. So toxic relationships, not giving yourself self-care. So when you put yourself last, being a people pleaser is a pattern of trauma.
yes,
Being a people pleaser, seeking outside validation, needing outside validation, people that are traumatized often have a tendency to overpraise or overvalue other people in place of themselves. So they will take I call that misplaced value. So
Mm.
you will give an exuberant, unnecessary, unearned amount of value to anyone who shows you the least a bit of attention because you feel so unworthy and undeserving of any love or affection that when somebody shows you just a crumb of attention or affection or accolades, you start to apply all of this value. And that's actually a really toxic pattern because you idealize people, right? And that has nothing. A lot of times, and this is going to be ugly, but I hope somebody is listening and they catch this. A lot of times when that's done, it's not even that you value the person. You need them to be who you are projecting onto them because you need a hero.
Mm. Wow.
So you don't even really think as highly of the person as what may come out of your mouth or what your behavior may portray. You just
Mhm.
need them to be what you are idealizing them to be because you need a hero. And if they're giving you attention and accolades, the more important they are in your mind, the better that attention feels to you. So this is a very toxic pattern that shows up from childhood trauma. So those are just some of them. We could go deep with that, but I think those are some of the biggest ones.
Okay. Okay. So our next question is, what do you believe is the biggest obstacle to inner child healing?
That's a good question. And my answer is probably going to shock you a little bit. And this is just coming from my own experience. Okay, this is
Okay. Okay.
from the experience that I went through of, and I'm saying air quotes, really trying to heal so hard over the last, probably it's been about, I would say maybe 10 years of trying to heal from inner child trauma. It really kicked in around 7 years ago and it got super intense 3 years ago. And I was progressively getting worse. I was
Mm.
not getting better. The more I worked on healing, the more mentally defective I was, but like more symptoms of mental illness were showing up the more I pursued healing.
Mm.
And from that experience, and the pivot that I made last year around May, I started trying something different. From that experience, I'm going to say the biggest obstacle for me was the focus on it. It was the actual focus on
Mm.
healing because what you focus on will expand. And the more I looked into my wounds, the more I dug into the trauma, the more I dug into what happened to me, the more it was on my mind. The deeper I went, the
Okay.
more defective I felt. The deeper I went, the more I studied how trauma affects the body, how it affects the brain, how it gets lodged in your cellular memory. The more that knowledge was in my conscious understanding, the more daunting the task became of how am I going to fix this? How am I going to heal? So that was very overwhelming to me. And I just noticed from my own pattern, I was progressively getting worse. So I would have moments of illumination when I would learn something new, or maybe right after a good experience, I would have these moments of illumination, but they were so fleeting. I had fleeting moments of happiness, but my baseline, and I talk about this, I don't know if you've ever taught on this, but I talk about our baseline emotion or our
Mm.
emotional resting state. And so my baseline emotion or my emotional resting state was depression. It was deep depression. And so I had moments where I was able to pull myself out of that, but my natural resting state of emotion was sadness. And that's because I was always focused on trauma. I was always focused on trying to heal. And what you focus on will expand. What you're looking at is what you're thinking about. So that was the biggest obstacle for me.
Okay. Okay. Definitely a different perspective, but I can truly understand why that was the case. I honestly can. So, do you believe that people can do inner child work alone?
Um, do I believe that they can? Yes, I do believe that they can. Now, if you want more details, you're gonna have to expound because that was kind of a yes or no question. So,
Yeah, well, and normally what my guest would say is that they can start it on their own, but if it's so deep, they definitely need to get some help. And I tend to agree because if you can't acknowledge, if you don't recognize it, somebody taking you to somebody to get help, you're like, oh, why am I here? But if you acknowledge and recognize it, and then you start the process of trying to do something on your own, but you come to a point where you realize, listen, this is more than what I can handle by myself. I need to get some help. And so I guess my answer to that question was you can start it alone, but if it's so deep and if it's so ingrained, you definitely need to get some help. So what's your take on that?
so if you ask me if somebody can do something, you're speaking to whether or not it's possible. It's
Okay.
possible. It is
Okay.
definitely possible. Whether or not somebody should, whether or not it will be effective, I think it's more a question of effectiveness. Is it effectual?
Okay.
Are you getting results? And I really believe healing for everyone, it's a very personal journey. So for some people, therapy is going to work. For some people, they need trauma therapy. For some people, it's like a CBT or DBT therapy. Some
Hmm.
people, church does it for them.
Right.
Relationship with God. For some people, it's a creative outlet. Music, dance, art might be that thing for them. Some people just move on. Some people's way of healing from trauma or dealing with it is to not. It's just to move on and live in the moment and just enjoy your life. I feel that it's dangerous to create a hard and fast rule about how to deal with trauma. It's very
Okay.
dangerous because there's no one method that is going to work for everyone.
Right.
And
Right.
so it's how you're responding to it. You have to keep trying different methods until you find the one that makes you feel good. Because at the end of the day, why do we do any of this? Why do we do any of this? What even cues us to the need for the therapy or healing or help? It's that we don't like the way we feel. It's the end of story.
Right.
We don't like the way we feel. Am I right?
You're right.
And so you have to try methods until you find the one that makes you feel good. And nobody's going to know that better than you. You're the
Okay.
only one who's going to know how you feel after you apply different methods. So you have to do what works for you.
That is so true. So true. So our next question is, how can someone help others who may be struggling to identify the need for inner child work?
Be I would say that it's a balance between being a good listener,
Gotcha.
but also being a redirector. Because if somebody is really drowning in the memory of something that happened, or they're really lost in it and they keep talking about it, that's not healthy. When you identify what the issue is, to keep talking about it over and over and over again does not create any kind of release. It actually makes it bigger. So we have to be good listeners, but we also need to understand when it's time to stop listening and help redirect that person's attention toward what's going to feel better to them. Definitely don't ever invalidate. Don't invalidate somebody's pain. Don't invalidate their experience. Don't say you understand because you don't. Even if the exact same thing happened to you, your experience was different, your perspective was different, your understanding was different, the season of your life was you don't understand. And it's a useless thing to say. It's real empty comfort. Just listen, let them talk, and know when they've said enough to begin to stop the momentum of that sadness. Like you want to, I talked about my baseline emotion being sadness. The reason that my baseline emotion was sadness is because it's what I call emotional momentum. I was in negative emotional momentum. And momentum is a self-sustaining energy. It feeds itself. So
Right.
when you're sad, you get sadder and you keep
Right.
getting sadder and you keep getting sadder and sadder and sadder and sadder. Same thing when you're angry. You'd be a little angry. If you focus on it, you're more angry. Then somebody does something to tick you off. They cut you off on the road. You're more angry. Then they ring you up wrong in a grocery store. You're more angry. And so it's a self-feeding energy. You get angrier and angrier and angrier. Same thing with happiness. If you're happy, you keep getting happier. Good things happen. You have good luck. A friend calls you that you haven't heard from in 10 years. And so emotional momentum is really important. So if somebody is in negative emotional momentum, the best thing you can do for them is help them get out of it. Break that momentum. Break that momentum with happy. If you were a part of somebody's childhood and something negative happened to them, and this actually happened to me, and it was so powerful. My I think it was a friend, I call her acquaintance. I don't think friend is the appropriate term, but let's just say acquaintance. An acquaintance of mine from high school that I reconnected with after having not seen for 20 years. And she knew me back from high school. And she had all of these amazing stories that I did not remember. I didn't remember any of them. There was a cousin of mine that knew me when I was younger. All of these funny stories, fun memories, fun experiences. I remember talking to a relative that knew me when I was younger, and they were telling me all of these good things that happened. And the trauma that I experienced was so devastating and so painful that my nervous system had me locked in on those traumas, because trauma puts you in survival mode. And in survival mode, the survival center in your brain, the instinctive part of your brain that helps keep you alive, your amygdala, does not want you to remember joy. Because when you're under threat of death, joy is not an option. I need you vigilant. I need you ready to fight. I need you ready to run. I need you ready to survive, right? And so when you experience trauma, it has a tendency to almost negate or void out happy memories.
Mm.
And one of the best things that happened to me is me reconnecting with these people from my past that remembered all these happy experiences that I had completely forgot about. In my mind, trauma had repainted my childhood as something that was so ugly and dark and negative and horrible that I literally could not remember good, happy things that happened to me. And so one of the best things that happened to me was these people coming back into my life reminded me, girl, you had a good childhood. And they didn't say that to me because they didn't know what I was dealing with. They were
Right.
just there reminiscing with me, having fun, we're laughing. And I'm blown away. I'm like, how did I forget that? Oh, right. Yeah, that did happen. I remember that. Yeah, that was fun. Right. And so I think one of the good things that, I think I think that the belief is when somebody's sad, we should kind of be sad with them. Oh, I'm so sorry. Wow. Oh, that's horrible. Wow, that happened to, oh, that must have been so terrible. You must have felt horrible. I don't think that's the most effective way to help people. They already know that. Like, they already know that it felt bad. They already sad. If anything, if I'm sad, give me joy. Give me happiness. Help break that sad momentum, right? So I know
Okay.
that was a long answer, but I think that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about is helping people feel better. And we don't make people feel better by feeding into the sadness. So let them talk, validate them, just listen, I hear you, and then shift, break that momentum.
Okay. It's like a flywheel. If like you want to take it and turn it around, turn it the other way. I
Right,
got you. I got you.
right.
And listen, well, real quick, fact before we get out of here, I got to hear. We have to hear from our sponsor again. But when we come back, I want you to be able to tell people how they can contact you, how they can follow you, and also any last words you have. But right now, let's hear from our sponsor, BetterHelp. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/SaconiPrinceHeal. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who's had years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer, via a phone call, a video chat, or messaging. However you feel most comfortable, it is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/SaconiPrinceHeal or choose Saconi Prince Heal during your sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. And again, we want to thank BetterHelp for being a sponsor of this amazing episode. And we want to thank our guest for all the information that she shared and the heartfelt emotion that she presented today, because I know that even as she shared some stuff, it made me think about reframing and redirecting how I deal with some issues, even in my own life. So SouLah, tell us how can we find you? How can we connect with you if somebody want to follow you? Or also add, do you have anything else that you're doing that you want to make people aware of?
Yeah, I do have a new book coming out. I'm real passionate about relationships, so I like to show off my new book.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I don't
All
know
right.
yet. Oh, I think it went into the little fader, but it's called How to Love a Black Man. It's the first book in the Healing Black Love series, so I'm really excited about that. I'm taking pre-orders right now. It's actually dropping in June, but
Okay.
you can get more information about that on healingbblacklove.com.
Okay.
Healingbblacklove.com. So you're going to learn how to break all those unhealthy patterns and find the love that feels good to you. That's what that's about, okay?
Okay. All right.
uh, but yeah, I can be reached at all my socials and everything, or on my website. Best place to find my music, my comedy. I do stand-up comedy. So I have some
Okay.
shows coming up. Yep, here in Atlanta. I'll be in Kansas City. But you can find all of that on my social pages. So the best way to reach out to me is on my website, SouLah.me. SouLah.me. So that's SOULAH.me. Okay. And then all of my socials and anything else, my books, they're all on that website. So it's the best way. But would like to give a final word on the inner child healing. I want to say, somebody that experienced severe trauma, there is a questionnaire they use to determine how deeply traumatized you were in your childhood. And there's 10 questions that they ask that determine the depth of your trauma. And the more checks you have on this checklist, the more deeply traumatized you are, the more likely you are to suffer from suicidal depression, to have mental illness, bipolar disorder, all of that stuff, chronic pain diseases, which I have 3. I have lupus, fibromyalgia, and arthritis. I have all of those: anxiety, ADHD, CPTSD, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder. I've been diagnosed with all of those things. When I speak to you about, I've attempted suicide 7 times, twice divorce, well, 1.5 times. I'm almost there on the second one, Lord. Patterns.
Okay.
I have 7 children, and I'm really, really proud of that and thankful. But I'm saying all of that to tell you that when I speak to you about this, I am speaking to you from a place of experience, because on those 10 questions, I checked 9 of those boxes.
Mm.
9 of those 10 questions had happened to me within the first 5 years of my life. And so
Wow.
I suffered from severe childhood trauma. The things that I shared with you tonight is what actually worked for me after 10 years of focus on trying to heal from childhood trauma. This is what worked for me. I have a peace and a joy that I have never known. I have not been on medication anymore. So, all of those chronic pain diseases, I don't deal with any symptoms. I'm not on any medication. I've not had to go back to therapy. I haven't had any more suicidal depression or depression at all. Uh, None of the symptoms of all of these mental illnesses that I've been diagnosed with. And I say that tongue in cheek because I don't think it's not a thing. I just think it's not the thing that we think it is. You can't medicate away trauma. You
Mm.
just can't. You can't medicate something that happened to you. You know, like you
Right.
you you got to move through it. And so when we first started this, and I said healing is not the word I would use, but I get the word, so I'm gonna stick with it, but it's not the word that I would use. The reason that I said that is that you really can't heal something that happened to you in the past, because it's over with and the past doesn't exist. So it's giving you a backward focus. You're looking back, and your joy is right now in the present. It's not in the future, and it's not in the past. It's right here. And the analogy that I have for that, because my daughter called me, my oldest daughter called me 2 days ago crying about how she treated me before. Oh, I broke our relationship. It's never going to be like it was. I was a bad daughter. I feel tension between us. And I was like, baby, that's all, like, that tension is coming from you. I don't have any tension with you, sweetheart. I don't even, like, you keep reminding me of stuff that I don't even remember. What happened between us? I don't remember that. Like, I just enjoy you. And she's like, Mom, you really don't remember that? I was like, no, I don't, baby. What is it that you're trying to fix? And she's like, well, I'm just trying to remember, like, what happened, what point our relationship broke. And I asked her this. I said, baby, I said, what if you could pinpoint the exact moment and the exact incident down to the second in the incident of when everything fell apart and when it broke? What if you could pinpoint it exactly? What would you do about it? I don't know. Nothing. You would do nothing about it because you can't fix that. I was like, I said, if you could find the exact moment, the exact day, the exact incident that you think broke us beyond repair, there's nothing you could do about it. And the analogy that I gave her, I said, imagine trying to fix a broken arm from when you were 3. What if you had the flu when you were 5 and you try to take medicine for it now? She's like, man, yeah, that's kind of silly. I said, it is. Your life is right now. This is where you live. This is all you have to fix, Chikone, is this moment that you're living in right now. Like, this is where your joy is at. This is where your happiness is. And so if something comes to your memory, because we have memories, and I'm not denying that we're going to remember things, but if something comes to our memory from our childhood, the best thing to do is to let it pass through you. Don't hold on to it. Just let it pass through you. Let it go. Right? Because that season that I had where I was doing the inner child healing and I was talking to my dog, that was so helpful. But it was only helpful to the extent that I let it pass through. When I kept trying to hold on to it, it was reinforcing it. But when I
Mm.
let it pass through me and I really began to get into the now, that's when I started feeling really joyful, because I realized I can't heal something that happened to me in the past. I don't live there anymore. There's nothing there for me. My life is right here. This is where I live. This is where I find joy. And so the best way that you can implement inner child healing, and this is my best advice, and it's so fun. Let your child play. Let your child come out and play.
That's
Get that
that
baby
part.
out of the hospital. You know,
Yep. Yep.
she's not sick anymore, right?
Yep.
Because you can recreate your whole childhood in your mind by just focusing on the fun things that happen. You don't have
Yep.
to lock in on the abuse or the sexual abuse or the beatings or the poverty. You can remember the good times, the ice pops, the laughter, the late nights, right? Let your inner child play. Let her create whatever you didn't get to do when you were 5, you were 10. Do those things. Like
Yep.
that's real healing. And I don't call it healing, I call it expansion. Expand into the fullness of who you were created to be. Be fully present right here, today, right
Mm.
here, right now. Let that inner child be fully present in the way that he or she could not be then, right? Shut up. Stop crying before I give you something to cry for. You can't do that. You can't have that. So have it. Have the cream, have the extra cookie, paint on, go ahead and finger paint, make a mess, sleep late, get, you know what I mean? Watch
Right.
cartoons,
Right.
model, play, run outside, whatever it is that you feel you were denied, live it.
Yep.
Live.
Yep.
That's real healing. And that's the advice that I want to live people with, because that's how you gonna heal.
Smile.
That's how you gonna get this.
Yes, yes. I even talk about that in my book, having a second childhood, and it is possible.
Yeah,
It is definitely possible, and
love it.
I'm so glad the fact that you pointed that out.
Love it.
And listen, this wraps up another episode of our podcast. But I have to make sure that I have people to understand that I also do motivational speaking. So what I started to do is I started to close out my podcast with my scissor reel. So until next time, we'll see you later. Well, my name is Saucony Prince of SauconyPrince.com, where we make motivation personal by introducing you to yourself. I'm a motivational speaker, a trainer, and a coach. I'm also an author. I help people in the area of personal development and leadership development because I believe that you can't lead others until you learn how to lead yourself. But once you learn how to lead yourself, the next logical step is that you lead other people.
Saucony Prince is the best keynote I've ever seen.
He really encouraged me so much.
He has this ability of seeing in people what they don't see in themselves.
He was so confident. When he was coming to the stage, you could see like, wow, this is a lion.
Any actor that's going for a role, they do a case study. If I'm going to be a fry cook, I go to a restaurant and watch people that are fry cooks. If I'm going to be a mob boss, I go and, well, maybe not go to where the mob, but you take some notes as to what they do. Our children are watching us. What can they reference when they step into our shoes? I do what I do because I believe that people have truly yet to understand their purpose. Once you know who you are, nothing can stop you. But until you know who you are, anything can. So my goal is to really help people to understand their purpose and their calling. And oftentimes they have the answers themselves, but they're not asking the right questions. So I help people to get to that place to where they look at themselves, they step back and they see how they've been a help to those around them and what really drives them. And from that, they really understand the value of it. They learn to value their value and see what value their value brings. Because a lot of people, they have yet to do that. Until you know who you are, anything can stop you. But once you know who you are, nothing can stop you. I want you to understand that you are blessed. That you are blessed to be a blessing. That there is somebody looking up to you. They're looking at you. Don't ever forget that. Because if you ever do, you're going to leave them without a mind.
I've learned so much and I've experienced a lot of interactions with people.
The practical approach, like you can't just sit down there, you have to walk up to an opportunity. Sometimes you have to grab the opportunity. Sometimes you have to fight for the opportunity. There's so much life lessons.
I think from today onwards, I'll stretch out and reach to higher levels.